Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to draw a soft, fuzzy object. And you need a lot of soft mark making tools. So I have a soft pencil with a softly pointed edge. I have lots of erasers with nice soft edges and also chiseled edges cut with an X-Acto knife. And I have tons of these much finer teensy weensy little erasers, and there are many erasers with super fun shapes, and I have a kneadable eraser, and this is definitely a project in which to explore erasers. Of course, if you are going to draw a fuzzy object, you need a fuzzy object. So you can get an adorable Pikachu, or maybe a little lamb, or my son's teddy bear, or some kind of fuzzy cloth. And I'm going to go for the fuzzy cloth for starters. That's what I'm going to try, aim for. So let's see. The characteristic of texture is that it is a really special element of design because information enters through the eye, but we respond with a sense of touch. So there is a certain amount of synesthesia that takes place. And that's really exciting. And in order to create that effect in our drawings, we want to reproduce the information that the actual object is feeding the mind. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and lay down some graphite using my trusty graphite stick. And there are some folds in this cloth, so I'm going to make just sort of loosely based folds, and I'm going to lay down more graphite wherever the folds are deeper. And I'm going to lay less graphite on those areas where the folds are not as deep. More, less. And then I'm going to take my stump and I'm going to darken even further those places where there's a fold taking place. And there's a little bit of a declivity here, a medium tone, and then there's a little bit more of darkness here, and I start getting the ridge here of the fold. Here's another darkness, here's a ridge, so these are the ridges. Here's another fold. And I like to eliminate all of the surface texture created by the tooth of the paper. So I'm just going to very lightly go ahead and use my stump to soften the contrast, because the soft contrast is going to help communicate the feeling of softness. So in places where I want to see, that one I don't like, see how this one does. So in places where the light is hitting strongly, I'm going to create highlights. But notice that when I make the highlight, I'm using hatched marks. Sometimes they overlap at the ends, but they're pretty much next to each other. There are also marks, erased marks, that are wide at one end and kind of pointy at the other. And notice how the pointy end sticks out on top of the dark fold. That helps it become more visible. It helps, see how it's less noticeable here and it's more noticeable there. It turns out that whatever is happening along the edges of our soft object, the brain is going to interpret is also happening in the middle of the object. So the edges are super important. And so right here, I'm just going to make a couple more little furry spots. And here, there's a lot of furry spots going in kind of wild directions. So I'm just going to go like that. And there is a ridge. And now I am starting to cross hatch. And as in hatching and cross hatching, you are going to create lightness and darkness depending on how much of the paper shines through. And in this case, I've darkened the paper. So whereas normally in hatching and cross hatching, the paper is light, and then wherever you have more graphite or ink or whatever you're using, it's going to be darker. And wherever the lines are further apart and more of the paper is shining through, it will be lighter. So here it's the reverse because we're using our eraser as a drawing tool. So wherever I cross hatch with the eraser a lot, it's going to be lighter. And wherever I keep the crossed hatched, the lines of the eraser further apart from each other, it's going to be darker. So this is lighter, this is darker. Okay. Let's see. Usually the fuzzy, furry textures there's going to be a direction to the fur, and sometimes I see little clusters of fur, and so I'm going to darken that actually for starters, because I can't even see my light marks because it's not dark enough. And so going in both directions here. And I am going to darken the areas inside the folds. And I'm going to try to make it look fuzzy. The other thing I can do is darken with the side of the pencil, the spaces between the erased marks, and that way they appear even lighter, and it strengthens the illusion that there is a fold here and that these light lines are on top, peeking out over the folds. Now notice that I'm using the side of my pencil and that I'm holding my pencil like this, not with my wrist, but with my hand, so that I can use my whole arm, my whole shoulder. There we go. And in this area, I'm just going to create a sort of general fuzzy texture, and I'm going to try a different tool. I don't know if you have access to a electric eraser. but these are really fun. Super fun noise. And you'll notice that the area is so light on the paper that the erased mark barely shows through. Howsoever, if I use the eraser along a darker area, then the erased marks are going to show up more clearly. Okay, and you can strengthen the places where it's fuzzy with little hatchet marks. And I call hatchet marks marks that are like this, wide and then dagger-like. So those are called hatchet marks. And that's to distinguish them from a solid line, let's say, which ends the same way on both ends. This one, you'll notice, is pointy and wide and blunt at the other. So those are hatchet marks. And they are pointy. So I guess it might be better if I was describing a porcupine rather than a fuzzy surface. So I'm going to go ahead and soften them a little bit. And you can use your stump as a drawing tool. I'm going to, there we go. I'm just generating, trying to recreate the pattern of the fur. And strengthening it. And you see that I am slightly overlapping the lines. Sometimes they're all next to each other, sometimes they're slightly overlapping. And then you really do want the last marks to be erased marks. And I'm going to go back to my trusty love that sound. One thing that you want to notice is that I'm laying down the graphite, erasing, spreading it with a stump, erasing, laying down more marks. And so it's layers of marks. And that creates sort of a fuzzy, soft interior, different from the very crisp edges of the furry object. And so it's actually softer. And you may want to use a kneadable eraser. I'm not such a great lover of kneadable erasers, but some people really, really do super well with them. So I'm just going to unwrap this one and warm it up. And you can knead it like that. And you can make super sharp marks. Well, not super sharp. Some people can. I have trouble making super sharp marks, but you can make nice thin ones for sure. And again, marks are going to show up more clearly when the space behind them is dark. So if I want to create super clear eraser marks back there, I'm going to darken it a little bit. And then, there we go. Now they're showing up. Okay. If I made pretend that I was drawing the Pikachu, for example, you'll notice that it has highly reflective eyes and then a fuzzy, soft face. So I'm just going to pretend to draw the eye, and just to demonstrate the difference between, actually I'm defining this a little bit more. So I'm just now going to demonstrate the difference between the soft, and let's say that there was an eye here. A highly reflective object is going to have a lot of contrast between super dark areas and super light areas. Whereas this is all really, these values are all around the middle part of the value range. They're not super dark. So this is already the darkest mark on top of this fuzzy area. And I'm going to darken it, and then I'm going to create a highlight. And the highlight is going to cross from the really dark area to the not so dark area there. And it all got kind of dark, so I'm going to lighten it up. There we go. And I'm going to use my stump to shade it a little bit. And I'm going to add this. I'm going to go back over the sparkle. There we go. And I'm going to add a little eyebrow. How's that? So that now you know it's an eye. Here's the other part of the, here's a little, how's that? We can add another eye. I'll add it right here. And I'm using a 6B pencil in case you haven't noticed, because they will create nice dark marks. And the other thing about the dark erasers is they create nice soft edges. So it's a really nice pencil to use when you're creating soft surfaces or dark surfaces. There we go. And I'm going to add the sparkle. A little sparkle right there. How's that? So now I have two little eyeballs, and I guess I could put a little nose. There we go. The only thing is that it's on this funny folded fuzzy thing. Oh well, hope this has been helpful. Take care, have fun.